Okay, so today I want to talk about this deal that I made an offer on recently, and it's an interesting deal. It's a unique deal, so it needed a unique offer. So this is the deal. It's a 48 unit building. It's a really nice property, but the thing is, it's owned by a college and it's completely leased out by the college. And the key part here is that there was no rent roll. So the college kids, they don't pay rent in the traditional sense. Basically what they did is their rent is covered in their tuition costs. So there is no rent roll for me to look at. And another main point with this deal is that the college actually wants to lease back the entire building for 2 years from the new buyer. So this presents some interesting challenges here, because specifically when you're getting a bank loan, when a buyer's getting a bank loan on a property in a commercial real estate deal like this, you need to maintain a certain DSCR ratio, so debt service coverage ratio. The property has to be maintaining a certain level of income above, so it's 1.25% over the debt cost. So let's say you get a bank loan, for example, and the cost for the whole year is $100,000. The property income needs to be making minimum $120,000 a year for the bank to be comfortable with that. If it dips below that, you can have problems with the bank that they can call your note due. So them wanting to lease the entire building, it seems good, but for multifamily, it's not that good, because guess what? In 2 years when the lease is up, guess what? You're gonna have no units filled, and that's gonna be a problem with the banks. So it has to be a unique offer structure. So that's what I want to talk about today and how I structure this offer. It's a unique structure. Now, this is how we did it. So $5 million purchase price, $2.6 million bank loan, and a $1 million preferred equity piece with $1.4 million down. Now, why preferred equity over seller financing? Well, that's a good question. The reason why is that banks generally don't like seller finance positions behind their bank note. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I was to buy this property for $5 million. I get a bank loan, let's say they loan at 65% loan to value. I get a loan at $2.6 million. Okay, great. Then I go to the seller, hey, let's do a seller finance position, second position behind the bank note. That's what second position is, for $3.6 million, like for the remainder of the $5 million purchase price. So I get a bank loan at 2.6, then I get a seller finance note for the remainder to match that, to equal $5 million. Guess what? I come out $0 out of pocket. The banks have a problem with that because they want the buyers to have, quote, skin in the game on a deal. So they generally don't like seller finance positions behind their debt. I've bought seller finance deals before, but guess what? There's no bank involved. It's just my down payment in the front and then the seller, then the note. That's it. So there's no problems there. But when you're getting banks involved, they generally don't like that. So a preferred equity piece like this is just a way to kind of get around that. So I'll give you an example. In the bank's eyes, I'm buying this for $4 million. Let me explain this. So preferred equity, that $1 million will not be a lien tied against the property itself. Rather, it's going to be an equity position in the LLC that buys the property. So in the LLC operating agreement itself, that's where the terms are going to be outlined, the penalties. So for example, this preferred equity terms, 3% interest only payments with a 5-year balloon, that is in the preferred equity agreement like this, that's tied to the actual LLC that's buying the property, not the property itself. And this is where you outline the terms, the conditions, the penalties. Hey, voting rights. Hey, if we can't transition this building at this amount of time, there's going to be penalties. We're gonna drop down the amount that we owe you on this preferred equity piece. And so you might say, okay, why go through all this trouble? Well, it's because you can add more leverage to a deal with a preferred equity piece, and the banks don't know about this because it's happening outside of the property. It's not a lien attached to the property itself. It's attached to the LLC that buys the property. So when we buy it, we would create an LLC, and the college, the seller, would have an ownership stake in that LLC itself, and that's where the agreements would be outlined, as you can see right here. Now, another document that we need in this agreement is the master lease agreement. Now, like I said, they wanted to lease back the entire building for 2 years from the new buyers at, quote, market rates for the for the units. Like I said, there is no rent roll. No one's paying rent. The college kids' rents are included in their tuition to the college. So we need a master lease agreement that says, hey, this is what we're going to get in rents for each unit type. And more importantly, another thing that they mentioned too that's interesting about this deal, like I said, this is a unique deal, so it needs a unique structure. They wanted to cover some of the operating expenses. So they wanted to cover routine maintenance, janitorial. They wanted to keep running it as they were while these college kids are in there. So we have to have, okay, what is the tenant going to pay for here? What operating costs are they going to pay for? What is the landlord going to cover? So that's in the master lease agreement. Very important for this offer structure, right? Another thing, we need a transition plan. Like I mentioned before, you need to maintain a certain debt service coverage ratio with the banks, especially if you're dealing with a bank loan. You need to maintain a certain debt service coverage ratio. So the tenants, the college is going to leave in 2 years. So we need a transition plan for these units to go from college dorm rooms into market rate apartments. So here's the plan in the master lease agreement. It says this: from months 1 through 6, we can transition up to 25% of the building into market rate. So I need to be able to kick out 25% of the college kids, 25% of the building, so I can transition that into market rate tenants. And that goes on every 6 months. I can do another 25% of the building. These college kids need to be able to exit the property and me fill it with market rate. That's in the master lease agreement. Alongside a few other things in here that's important for this type of structure. But again, back to the preferred equity agreement. Now that I told you about this transition plan and everything, here's where it's important with the preferred equity piece. Like, hey, here's some of the penalties in the preferred equity agreement, because guess what? If we're going to be doing something that risky and intermingled with the actual seller itself on our building that puts the buyer at risk, we need to have some penalties and consequences if they don't fulfill their end of the obligation. Because guess what? Who's on the hook for this deal and the debt is going to be the buyer, right? So here's an example of some penalties. Now, this is in the preferred equity agreement that's in the operating agreement in the LLC, right? This is alongside the master lease agreement that we're doing with the college, right? So in that agreement, we have some penalties here that's attached to the preferred equity, $1 million. Hey, if the tenant fails to vacate such units in accordance with the transition plan of the master lease, right? That, hey, we need to transition 25% of this building within 6 months, and every 6 months that goes up and up, right? So we can have a fully transitioned building at the end of the 2 years. That's the goal with this structure. If they fail to vacate the units, that's a reduction of $75,000 per month until compliance, right? If the tenant fails to pay its share of operating expenses, guess what? When we're underwriting this deal, I want to show you, when we're underwriting this deal, and we're looking at, okay, what's the income, what's the expenses? I underwrite full operating costs as if we're covering it full amount from the front end, because guess what? In 2 years, we would be, right? So that's in there. But in the preferred equity agreement and the master lease, they said that they wanted to cover some operating expenses. So there has to be some consequences if they don't fulfill that obligation. If tenant fails to pay its share of operating expenses that they agreed to in the master lease, that's also a reduction of preferred equity balance by $75,000 per month. Now, you can do these same types of penalties and this and that on a seller finance deal, but again, we're doing it on a preferred equity. It's very similar to a seller financing structure, but we're doing it on a preferred equity because there is a bank loan involved, and we want to be able to use that piece in the debt stack to get more leverage on the deal. But without it being a seller financing note, it can be a preferred equity piece. And that's why it's an interesting deal. Okay. So again, let's go through it again real quick. Let me break this down too. In the bank size, right? In the bank size, what do they see? Because they're not going to see this preferred equity piece. And here's the key with this deal. In the bank size, we are buying this for $4 million. We're buying this for $4 million because they don't see this $1 million, right? So it's a $5 million purchase. We're buying it for $4 million. We're getting a loan on the $4 million at, let's say, 65%. 65% of $4 million is $2.6 million. That's where I got the bank account from, right? And then plus the $1.4 million down payment, that would be raised as well, and I'm going to get into that. But in the bank size, we're buying it for $4 million At 65%, that's a $2.6 million loan, plus 1.4, that's $4 million right there. So that's what the bank sees. They don't see this $1 million piece. Now let's get into the income. Let's see, how much money are we going to be making on a deal like this? Okay, so say they pay the market rates that they agreed to. This is what it would shake down to. The total income, $633,600 a year. Okay, great. That's the income. Now, expenses, operating expenses. I'm underwriting as if the buyer is going to be covering the full operating expense for the entire time, just because that's what I want to do. Insurance, we got property tax, senior bank loan. I go into that. This is what you can guesstimate for a average interest rate right now, 6.95% interest rate. That's your monthly payment on the $2.6 million loan. And then we get into the preferred equity. There, in the preferred equity agreement, we agreed to 3% interest only with a 5-year balloon. So that shakes down to on $1 million, 3% interest only is $30,000 a year. Now, the down payment, $1.4 million, we would have to raise. If we're doing 11% returns, okay, that's what I had here, 11% returns for the $1.4 million, that equals $154,000 a year. So adding all that up, total expenses is $587,539 a year. Total income, $633, leaving me, the operator, a net cash flow of $46,000 a year. Plus, so let's say it all depends on how you structure your raised equity. I said here that we'll be doing just a flat 11% return on the $1.4 million. So they're not necessarily entitled to any of the upside on the equity, at least on this example of the return structure. So it's $46,000 a year in net cash flow, plus, let's say I'm buying this thing for $5 million, right? Let's say in 5 years, in 10 years, it's worth $7 million. Guess what? That $2 million is going to be for me, for the general partner. Now, you could structure things with the raised capital so that they take gains of that, and that might be an easier way for you to raise money. Key part. But this is the offer structure, and it's a unique deal. It's an interesting deal because of the situation with the college, the fact that it's one tenant. So if I wanted to kick them all out, it's a tough situation. They want to lease back the entire property. One tenant for multifamily, it's not common, and it's going to be hard to get that passed with the banks. So you have to have a plan like this in place. But this is the structure, and this is where preferred equity piece comes in instead of a seller finance note. So I thought it would be an interesting deal to look at and show everyone. So I figured it'd be important. If you want to see more deals, like I'm going to make more videos like this on offers and deals that I'm working on. So let me know what you want to see. If you want copies of these documents, like the LOI, what I sent to the college, like, hey, this is what we're going to pay. This is what it's going to look like, a letter of intent. If you want copies of like a preferred equity agreement like this and master lease, let me know. I'll just have it. It's free. Just click the links below. But yeah, let me know what you think about this deal, about this type of structure. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions about it, interesting thoughts, takeaways, let me know. But yeah, this is the deal. I figured it's an interesting deal, interesting offer, so I figured it'd be a cool video. All right, thanks.